It's time. I have played the Little Nightmares demo a good few times now, and I can assure you, I feel like I have a good grasp of where Little Nightmares 3 is going and how it's going to end up. Theories are for later, but in this video we're going to talk about my opinion on the demo and how I'm feeling in regards to Little Nightmares 3 and if it's going to be a positive experience. And to cut the story short, I think it will be. Hello everyone, welcome your faces. My name is It's Just Jord, and if you're new to the channel, I make content on Little Nightmares. And of course, if you go back on the channel history, I make tons of theories, maybe even a little bit of a dabbling of news. Not always, but sometimes. But of course, if that intrigues you, make sure you hit subscribe and like, do all the usual YouTubery stuff, and of course, hype the video if you have a free hype available. Again, still a new feature, not fully aware of hype and how it really works, but as a YouTuber, I need to promote these things. So, with that being said, shameless self-promotion out of the way, let's actually get into the video. These are my opinions, nothing more. Everyone's going to have their own experiences and their own feelings on it. No one's particularly right or wrong. It's just how we perceive the game, and that's fine. I'm going to start off with the good. I think there is a lot to talk about in the good. I've got a few notes here that I want to highlight. So gameplay, I love the feeling of the movement. The movement I think is quite sound. Of course, again, I experienced it more on keyboard. I did have a go briefly with a controller in it, and again, the difference is amazing. Always play with a controller if you get a chance, because I have to say it's obviously with the input of the keyboard, it's a little bit more straight to the point, and whereas controller have got like a nice tweened like kind of axes, like calibration and normalization through the axes and stuff, so it feels a lot nicer to play on controller. And of course, Little Nightmares is all about the immersion and feeling, so if you're looking for absolutely best of the best, I'd say play with a controller, no matter if you are on PC or not. I think one of the big things I absolutely love about the demo and so far about Little Nightmares 3 is actually the limitation. And I say that because similar to Little Nightmares 2, when Mono used to use a weapon, there was some kind of trade-off. There was, of course, in Little Nightmares 2, you couldn't run with this weapon, you couldn't do certain bits with this weapon. Now, in Little Nightmares 3, they've brought that with the player, and again, it's a fantastic little addition. But you can't do everything with these tools out. For instance, Lo has his bow out, he cannot jump, and I find that an absolute fantastic little trade-off. And again, same with Alone. You have to trade off this part of security, if you will, and become more vulnerable in the scene. And I think it's absolutely a fantastic way to sort of adapt the gameplay further than Little Nightmares 2. And I think it's fantastic. I think they've nailed that completely. I think the puzzles are very reminiscent of Little Nightmares 2. I don't have much to sort of comment on there because, of course, we've not seen the full extent of everything yet. We, of course, have the intro to the game, which was the demo, which is like the very early bit of the Necropolis. But these are very intro puzzles, so they are going to be quite a little bit go A to B, pull up a plank, get a key. It's very sort of walk you through stuff to start with. And very early on, they established quite an interesting mechanic of having to go back and forth between Lo and, of course, Alone. And, you know, for instance, we saw in the one puzzle where you had to pull the platform out and you had to shoot the anchor that holds the platform out, and I thought that was just a fantastic way to do that. And again, puzzles are hard to design. Go look at any developer that is making a puzzle game, and that's like the hardest part of designing puzzles is literally that. It's just making the puzzles, utilizing all the mechanics you've got involved. And I think so far from what I've seen, I've got confidence, and I fully believe that it's going to be fully utilized and used in the full game, because again, I think they're doing a fantastic job on that. Also, of course, the tools. Now, again, the tools I think are actually a really interesting avenue to take, because they're not solely is embedded like the equipment that the children use, like Lo and Alone, and like Lo's bow and Alone's wrench. They're like embedded in the character. You can use them on the fly wherever you are in the game. But the tools used for the chapters, I think, are actually a really dynamic option, and I think it actually really tailors well into the gameplay. And even with these additional mechanics and things like that, it still has that vulnerability vibe that has always been in Little Nightmares 1 and 2. And I do feel like this is, again, it's really sound going forward. Like, I'm very happy with how that's turned out. For me, personally, it's adding such a enjoyment to the gameplay, and especially in the sense of like verticality. Like the Necropolis already is becoming quite interesting to me, because I always thought the Necropolis is going to be quite a weak chapter just because it's the starting chapter. I think later on we're going to go back to the Necropolis when it's dark, and I think that's when it becomes a little bit more oh no. But I think the very early on, it's very similar with Little Nightmares 2. I think the Wilderness was the weakest chapter. Again, pacing is the different story, especially with Little Nightmares 2, but introduction, the sort of starting chapter is always kind of considered the weakest, but I think because of the verticality and the tools that have been added to the chapter, it gives it a bit more spice. So while it is like kind of the intro, it's still sort of acting as if like the gameplay mechanics are really playing together in that chapter, which is again what you're after. Gameplay is king when it comes to these types of things in experience. So I think they've done a fantastic job there, and I'm really intrigued to see how far that sort of goes in. I hope that tools are sort of more dependent on the chapter you're in. I think that would be a real cool little detail to have. Now, of course, talking about characters, I think the characters are spot on. I think Lo, fantastic. Love his design. I love the bow. Personally my favorite, and I've got to admit, it's a bow. I can't not pick a bow. But I think Lo's design, as I've always said before, is really fascinating, especially with, of course, spoiler alert, the Lonely Ones editions. Again, I'll have a video out on that soon, because of course I've read through it a few times now, and I think there are some interesting takes, especially in regards to Lo, and I think it's quite interesting. So Lo is a fantastic character. The design is very interesting, and again, it's very playful, and I quite enjoy the whole mask scenario. Again, we'll get onto costumes a little bit later, because I think they're so cool. The costumes are really cool, and just a side note, how they handle sort of like changing costumes for you and the AI, fantastic. That was an absolute fantastic addition that I love. And also shout out for the dyslexic font. I love that font. I use it quite often, especially because, you know, I think Lo has probably, for me, I've had most fun currently with Lo, because I love the bow. I think the bow is just fantastic. Alone is very close runner up to that. Her design in itself is fantastic. If you were to put the characters side by side, the silhouettes are just fantastic. They are so unique and so to a character, and so much personality in them. And I do love Alone's character, because again, it's really supportive. She's really mechanical driven, and again, the fact she has a wrench on a watch that's like a magnet, it's fantastic. I love it, and again, it plays really well into the cooperative experience. One of the things as well is, of course, like I mentioned earlier, the appearance of each of the characters are unique. I do enjoy it. I think it's really worth it, if you haven't already, to try each of the characters, because you are missing a beat if you don't, because they do, because of the responsibilities and the mechanics that each of them have, it feels very inclusive but different each time you play it on a different sort of playthrough. It's very fun in that regard. Now, we get to the big one, so level design. So initially, like I mentioned, I always assume that the opening chapter is going to be the weakest of them. But I will say the Necropolis so far is actually very pleasing to me, even with the fact that it's in the daytime setting, which again is a massive thing in itself, because of course, making daytime scenarios aren't as easy to make scary, and I feel like they've done such a good job with like the atmosphere and the level design and how it's sort of displayed and environmentally told to us. I think it's hitting the nail on the head, even in the sort of brighter sense. And of course, we will at some point find the Necropolis in a darker one, which is going to be, I think, fantastic, and it's really going to sort of bring that back to, oh god, 50-50, which one do I actually kind of like. And it's like, I think the Necropolis has done so far pretty much everything it needs to. It's a great little introduction. It is scary to people, and it is scary to some people. That's Little Nightmares in a flash. In terms of actual like design of, again, the levels and puzzles, I think it's paced perfectly. I actually am finding the flow of the game a lot more enjoyable. I think the little hints of like Monster Baby and bits like that, and of course the ending of it, I think it's just absolutely fantastic how they've played that out. And it is, even though it is such a bright light level and such a bright color palette, if you will, it's still got a real good immersion and tension in there. Now, of course, you'll have people argue left and right that, you know, it's either not scary or it is scary. And again, it's subjective. You know, one person might find it scary, the other one might not. That's fine. What you're after is more the immersion and your experience. And again, Little Nightmares is from the perspective of a child. It's always going to be sort of like a exaggerated sense of something. And of course, it's not to say that Little Nightmares doesn't have gore, because it does. And we can see that clearly in the carnival chapter and things like that. So we know that these kind of twisted sort of appearances are due. But it seems as if the Necropolis is going to be the safe sort of introduction to that. And again, on very much point. And I feel like it's going in the absolute correct direction. I think the full game, from this demo alone, I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. I think, so far from what I've played, like I've mentioned, I'm enjoying it. I feel like it feels Little Nightmares-y. Of course, there are a few points I would like to make. So one of the issues I had, and it's a very light one, I believe this is like just a loading asset error, but I had an issue where the vent wasn't loading in, and I believe that is on one particular save of mine. It isn't throughout the whole game. I can actually just restart it and it comes back. But it was very difficult because on the first time I played the game, I never got it. But if that was a person playing for the first time, I think they would have been very confused and very frustrated on figuring out where to go next, because that key piece of object in the level didn't load in. So I think that's something that might need to be double checked. And I think one of the biggest things that a lot of people have complained about is, and I've got to admit I'm fully on board with this, because it did feel very it feels very Little Nightmares-esque to have it, but it could be down to a performance thing. They've turned it off. It could be added later on down the line. Don't know. The issue I'm on about is, of course, when you fall from a height, the character doesn't necessarily ragdoll and bone crack like we have had in Little Nightmares 1 and 2. And again, whether that's intentional or a performance preservation thing, I don't know. I would like to see that added later on at some point, or with the full release. Again, making a ragdoll from the mesh, I imagine would be a little bit now of work, because they're so far to the end. So don't know, don't hold your breath on that one, but I kind of would like to see that one as well. And one of the big things I have seen people complain about, which I think is very valid, is, especially if you're playing solo, and this is always going to be an issue, I believe, having to wait for the AI to catch up, especially with like interactable objects and things where you have to do it as a duo. Now this is always going to be an issue, just because it's really hard to sort of calculate and find out where the AI is going to be at any given time when you're sort of interacting. And the only sort of resolution I can have with that is that, you know, the game keeps a marker of where your off-screen points are from what you're visually seeing, and if you interact with something early, then they can, you know, quickly warp to the point just off camera, so you aren't broken by the immersion. That's the only way I can sort of think of a quick fix for it, if that makes sense. But again, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know how they're doing, you know, and all this jazz. Again, AI is a bit of a complicated bugger, especially when it's like a cooperative AI. It's always good fun, and there's never no bugs at all. There's never no bugs with AI. Again, I enjoyed the experience. I had that maybe twice, but it didn't sort of hinder my gameplay. But I do feel like it could be changed. There could be a fix they could add there. Again, like I said, they could find some off-screen points and just see. I don't think it's a massive issue personally, but I have noted it, because when it has happened to me, it has made me wait like a good few, like nearly about 10-20 seconds before. So maybe they come up with a fix, maybe not. But I would say that's pretty much probably the only sort of like complaints I have, if you will. Again, it feels very Little Nightmares-esque. It feels very home. It feels exactly the way it needs to. It plays the way it needs to. Personally, I think it's going in the correct direction. I think it's fantastic. I think it's playing exactly how it should be, and I think we're going to have a great time. So I went ahead and asked you, the community, what you think so far. Here are a few of the responses we got. And so we got Ghoul. Incredible. It's literally so perfect, honestly. Feels and controls like a dream, and it was so nice spending time in the nowhere again. And that ending, so interesting and insane. I think you might be able to tell I kind of liked it. And I totally agree with Ghoul. Abraham says, I think it was by far the best demo we've ever gotten for Little Nightmares game. This demo felt more like a demo than Little Nightmares 2 did. I'm very happy, looking forward to where that spiral goes. I agree, because in reality, the Little Nightmares 2 demo wasn't actually as long as you think. It was a very short snippet of it, and I think, like Abraham said, the Little Nightmares 3 demo actually goes on for a little bit longer, and we get a longer taste of the demo. Jen says, I'm so glad they are so consistent with the Little Nightmares vibe. I absolutely adore the new dynamic they added, and the Umbrella, of course, co-op aspect of it, which is absolutely amazing, and bonus points for keeping the handhold feature, which I'm so excited for. And again, totally agree. Again, this goes back to my argument about the whole vibe and keeping the whole atmosphere very Little Nightmares-esque. And again, I think a lot of people are experiencing this, and again, comments like this just go to show it's really working and connecting with people. Dapper Buddy, who Roger said, I enjoyed it a lot. It was way higher than my expectations, and I'm generally surprised I wasn't stuck and there were barely any bugs other than the Beatles. It's also awesome in the story aspect. I was very intrigued at the end, and it has not let me down, and I'm so glad I pre-ordered it. And exactly that. I think, again, it is very much across the board. I think the feeling is mutual for a lot of people and a lot of Little Nightmares fans. It's really coming across that they understand the source material and how it's literally put together, and the world Supermassive Games are stepping into. And again, I feel like they're doing a fantastic job. And again, it seems the community is saying the same thing too. And Colin says, absolutely perfect. Just knowing that it's only the demo and it's this good, I can't wait. I will say though, fingers crossed they keep the ragdoll physics in. Literally, we covered that in the video, and again, I think it's a very common cause at the moment that people are feeling. The ragdoll thing is very Little Nightmares-esque. I don't know what it is about it, but it just feels very much home. But we'll see if they add it in the future. So of course, I asked a question on YouTube as well, and of course, Malik says, extremely promising in my opinion. They made the daytime environment still feel ominous and eerie, which has never been done in Little Nightmares before. Level design is great, and I'm so excited for the full release. Couldn't agree more. This is what I was alluding to earlier with the whole daytime necropolis feeling, and how they've nailed that still in the daytime, so you know the nighttime necropolis is going to be a good one. Gemini says, we had faith and they delivered. The pacing was smooth and logical. The atmosphere and sound design were peak, and it gave us just enough revelation to spark literary of questions that demand answers. I know I'm biased, but this was already a 10 out of 10 for me, and I'm very much in agreement with Gemini right there. Step Play says, legendary, overwhelming, wonderful, amazing, neat, dazzling, astounding, noteworthy, delightful, awe-inspiring, lovely, outstanding, nice, excellent. That took him a while. I don't blame you, but low and alone. Fair enough. I see what you're doing there. I think I'm going to pronounce this name wrong, so I'm just going to say Rainy. What stood out to me the most was the voice lines. As someone who's listened to Six saying hey and oi in my ear over and over again, to hear a voice, I'm really glad the kids have their own voices. And I must admit, it's one thing that I didn't talk about mainly in the video, but I couldn't agree more. There definitely seems to be more of a personality with the voices, and especially how they express themselves within the game. And I think this is going to really tailor into later on when whatever happens, and then it's going to be more of a deep cut. And it's going to mean a lot more, because again, we're seeing a lot more of their personality come to the surface. Bilson, I think is the name. I do apologise. I'm so glad people are giving the Necropolis some love. It looks so cool so far. And to be honest, I had my doubts about how scary the giant baby could be. But that ending scene where she just stares at them for the moment is generally unsettling. And I 100% agree. For some reason, translating the monster baby when watching like the trailers and things, it doesn't seem as intense. But when you play the game, you definitely feel it a lot more. And again, the ominousness of the monster baby and the trickle of interactions that we get, and then ultimately the ending with it being revealed, it was very brilliant. So again, totally agree with Bilson there. Invade Mav says, it's incredibly interesting. It shows off a very diverse location, which is very welcome. Couldn't agree more. People doubted that a brighter environment could be just as imposing and ominous as a darker environment, which we've had in the series, and those doubts have been put to rest, and I could not agree more. Again, I think most people and most Little Nightmares fans that have experienced the Necropolis now in the demo have felt that feeling of normal Little Nightmares returning, that ominous and atmospheric feel, and of course, and just how it feels so unsettling to be in the Necropolis knowing that the monster baby's around and we're sort of lurking between the crows and the beetles and things. And again, I fully agree with the comment, totally agree. I think the environment, now you've sort of experienced it more immersively, it really translates much better than you saw like on a screen just watching it. And like Gabriel says here, awesome. The atmosphere and gameplay is exactly what I was looking for, apart from some of the minor frustrations like the AI acting up. And again, this is something we covered earlier in the video as one of the sort of things I had an issue with too. Again, the slow AI I think might need to be sort of addressed definitely going in the future, because in some instances it is going to kind of sort of not break the immersion, but it will take you out of it for a brief moment when you sort of have to sort of where are they kind of deal in it. And I think that does happen a little bit in the demo, especially with some of the interactions. So thank you everyone who left a comment on Twitter or on YouTube. I appreciate it greatly. If you didn't get directly referenced in the video, I apologize, but believe me, there are going to be more episodes in the future where this can happen. So make sure when I mention it in the post, make sure you give me your opinion and be as honest as you have to be as honest as you want to be. I really enjoy these types of videos, and I quite like this section. I've been really enjoying people's responses and how as a community we are coming together and how that's turning out now. So again, thank you so much for watching this video. But again, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed this little video. Again, I think the future of Little Nightmares is looking very promising. Supermassive Games have really cooked while doing Little Nightmares 3, and I think it's just the future is looking good. And again, thank you Bandai, thank you Supermassive Games and everyone involved with Little Nightmares for continuing the series. It is absolutely looking phenomenal, and I am super excited for Little Nightmares 3. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure you hit like and subscribe, and hype is the new one. Do all the usual YouTuber stuff. But with that being said, have a lovely morning, day or night wherever you are in the world. Stay safe, and I'll see you all in the next Little Nightmares theory video. Bye!